Have you ever asked yourself the question, who is the Antichrist, or the little horn power, or the fourth beast? We're going to allow the Bible to reveal to us the identity of the Antichrist, the little horn power, and the fourth beast. And does the Bible promise us victory? There are so many different theories around the identity of this Antichrist individual, spoken of by Daniel as the little horn power, by the Apostle Paul as the man of sin, by Jesus as the abomination of desolation. We're going to allow the Bible to reveal to us who really is this Antichrist individual.
The angel told Daniel that this fourth kingdom would be different from the other kingdoms. It would be exceedingly strong, and it had enormous iron teeth that destroyed its prey. Here is pictured a crucial, vicious power. A more fitting description of the rise of the Roman Empire could not be found. It was more ruthless and brutal than all the previous empires, sometimes annihilating whole cities. When it didn't destroy or subjugate a people, it used them as slaves or sold them into slavery. It is interesting to note that in Daniel's description of this monstrous beast, he said it had iron teeth. In the metal image, the fourth kingdom was represented by iron legs. Daniel was intrigued by this nondescript beast. It was a curious sight, but he was especially interested in its 10 horns. He said in Daniel chapter 7 verse 8, "I considered the 10 horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots." Now the angel told Daniel that the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kingdoms that shall arise. No doubt Daniel's mind flashed back to the great metal image with 10 toes, representing 10 divisions of the breakup of the Roman Empire, accomplished in 476 AD by the barbaric tribes of northern Europe. These 10 horns of the monstrous beast and the 10 toes of the metal image represented 10 smaller kingdoms that would result in the breakup of the Roman Empire. Descendants of 7 of these kingdoms or nations are still in Europe today.
Now the famous question is, who is this little horn power?
Daniel noticed something else about this little horn. Daniel 7 verse 8, "And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things." This part of the description of the little horn troubled Daniel. In fact, he wrote, "I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit, and the visions of my head troubled me. I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and a dividing time." So here we have a prophecy of a great persecuting Antichrist power. But God has not left his children on planet Earth without sufficient warning and information to be able to recognize and resist the deceptions of Satan. Through the prophet Daniel, God foretold the devil's master plan to delude and trap the whole world during Earth's last hours. In fact, God gives a detailed description of the means Satan would use to accomplish this final deception. There would be a powerful movement, but which would directly subvert the scriptures in practice and doctrine. Daniel called this Antichrist power the little horn. Daniel recognized that this prophecy was more than just a prediction of secular history in advance. It had to do with God's people, for this little horn power would make war against the saints of God and would actually prevail against them for a long period of time. It would be a hostile, persecuting power, a power or agency used by Satan to make war against God's people and his truth. As Daniel thought about this little horn that would persecute God's people and would have the audacity to try to change God's law and times, he said in Daniel 7:28, "I, Daniel, was deeply troubled by my thoughts, and my face turned pale, but I kept the matter to myself." All of this is but a background or introduction to the career of the little horn, and of course the great white throne, heavenly judgment of Daniel chapter 7. As we turn the pages of New Testament prophecy, we discover that the characteristics of the Antichrist, as described in the New Testament, are identical to those of the little horn power described in the book of Daniel. Daniel. The Apostle Paul wrote to the Thessalonians concerning the work of this power in the last days. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 4. He opposes and exalts himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, and even sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming to be God. In the book of Revelation, John wrote, Revelations chapter 13 verse 5 and 7, and there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. It was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. The Bible pictures a power operating in the world during the New Testament times, which would arise to great authority and influence over the breakup of the Fourth World Empire and continue to deceive the world until the close of Earth's history. Three important principles must be kept in mind before we expose the Antichrist. Firstly, we are not referring to individuals. We are referring to a system, a power, an agency. God gives us 10 characteristics that clearly identify the Antichrist. All 10 points must fit in order to correctly identify this power. The term Antichrist not only means against or opposed to Christ. More specifically, it means in the place of, or one who assumes the place of Christ. In other words, the Antichrist is someone who combines both of these roles by assuming the prerogatives of Christ in such a way as actually to militate against the spirit, principles, and person of Christ.
Now here are the 10 identifying signs of the Antichrist. Number 1, it came up after the 10 horns.
According to the prophecy, the little horn was to arise to great power after the 10 horns. In other words, after the division of the Roman Empire into 10 major kingdoms after 476 AD, Daniel chapter 7 verse 24, and the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them, and he shall subdue 3 kings.
Number 2, it came up among the 10 horns.
Daniel 7 verse 8, while I was thinking about the horns, there before me was another horn, a little horn, which came up among them. Now geographically, this power would rise among the 10 nations of Western Europe. Politically, it would start off small and grow in prominence. Roman leaders like Constantine began to give allegiance to the Bishop of Rome. The official Christian church thus arose with its headquarters in the city of Rome. The Roman church rose to prominence among the other 10 horns.
Number 3, it uprooted 3 horns.
Daniel 7 verse 8. In verse 8 we read, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it. As we study history, we find that 3 of the 10 horns or kingdoms opposed the growing power of the Roman Church. These 3 tribes or kingdoms were called Arian kingdoms because they believed in a form of Christianity taught by a missionary called Arius. However, the Catholic emperors of the Eastern Empire found ways to help Bishop of Rome by eliminating these 3 Arian powers. In 493, the Heruli met their fate with the help of the Catholic Emperor Zeno. Another Catholic Emperor, Justinian, exterminated the Vandals in 534 and then broke the power of the Ostrogoths in 538. Thus, the 3 horns of Daniel's prophecy were plucked up by the roots, making the rise of the Roman Church a reality. It was at this time that Justinian tried to bring the empire together by a decree establishing the Bishop of Rome as the political and religious leader of Western Rome. Notice this statement by the historian Thomas Hobbes. If a man consider the origin of this great ecclesiastical dominion, he will easily perceive that the papacy is no other than the ghost of the deceased Roman Empire, sitting crowned upon the grave thereof. The Roman Empire has not perished, but has only undergone a transformation. How did this transformation, this transfer of power take place? It happened gradually. As disorder grew, more and more people looked for security. The Bishop of Rome seemed to offer that security and hope. By the 5th and 6th centuries, Roman rulers like Constantine turned to the church. Soon, bishops began taking charge of state business. Little by little, the church became more political and corrupt, and the state became more and more under the control of the church. In fact, in AD 800, Charles Charlemagne, king of the Franks, created what he called the Holy Roman Empire, and the world entered what has been called the Dark Ages. So according to history, the power which came up after the other 10 kingdoms was none other than the Roman branch of the Catholic Church. Of course, the Roman Church had roots extending back to the early hours of Christianity, but it was not until 538 AD, following Justinian's decree, which gave the Bishop of Rome power over the political as well as the ecclesiastical affairs of the kingdom, that the little horn power became more powerful and influential than the other horns. The year 538 AD saw the beginning of papal Rome.
Number 4, it was to be a leading power.
Daniel 7:20. This power was to become more stout than his fellows, more imposing than the others. In other words, he was to become more powerful and influential than the other horns or kingdoms. Karl Conrad Eckhart wrote in the Papacy and World Affairs, page 1, under the Roman Empire, the popes had no temporal power, but when the Roman Empire had disintegrated and its place had been taken by a number of rude barbarian kingdoms, the Roman Catholic Church not only became independent of the states in religious affairs, but dominated secular affairs as well. In Meyer's General History, page 455, we read, under him was very nearly made good the papal claim that all earthly sovereigns were merely vassals of the Roman pontiff. Almost all the kings and princes of Europe swore featly to him as the overlord. Rome was once more the mistress of the world. The vicar of the incarnate Son of God, appointed high priest and supreme temporal ruler, the Pope, sat in his tribunal impartially to judge between nation and nation, between people and prince, between sovereign and subject. Taken from Henry Cardinal Manning, The Temporal Power of the Vicar of Jesus Christ, 1862, page 46. The Roman Church thus came to dominate Western Europe for over 1,000 years and crowned or deposed kings as it pleased. It was able to place a ban on entire nations if they fell into its disfavor. Rebellion against the Roman Church or the papacy was thus quickly quelled, even if it led to war.
Number 5, it was to be somewhat different from the other beasts.
Daniel was also shown that this little horn power would be different from the other kingdoms. Daniel 7:24, he shall be diverse from the first. Was this power different? Indeed it was. The other kingdoms were political powers, but the little horn power was a church, an ecclesiastical entity that wielded political power. The Catholic historian J.J. Ignatius von Dollinger wrote, out of the ruins of the Roman Empire, there gradually arose a new order of states whose central point was the papal see. Therefore, inevitably resulted a position not only new but very different from the former. The American Catholic Quarterly Review, April 9/11, said, long ages ago, when Rome through neglect of the Western emperors was left to the mercy of the barbarous hordes, the Romans turned to one figure for aid and protection and asked him to rule them, and thus commenced the temporal sovereignty of the popes, and meekly stepping to the throne of Caesar, the vicar of Christ took up the scepter to which the emperors and kings of Europe were to bow in reverence through so many ages.
Number 6, it was to speak great blasphemies against the Most High God.
Daniel says that this horn had eyes like the eyes of a man and a mouth that spoke boastfully. The eyes of a man symbolize human wisdom and intelligence. This would be a human religious system based on the teachings of man. Daniel 7:25, and he shall speak great words against the Most High. Words of blasphemy and self-exaltation is what Daniel is referring to here. The word Antichrist really means in the place of God, not merely against God. The Pope considers himself to stand in the place of God on earth. In fact, he claims to be God and to have the power of God. When Jesus was on earth, he was accused of blasphemy and claiming to be equal to God, and for claiming power to forgive sin. We note from their own works that the Roman Church makes the same claims. We hold upon this earth the place of God Almighty. The great encyclical letters of Pope Leo. The Pope is not only the representative of Jesus Christ, but he is Jesus Christ himself, hidden under the veil of flesh. The Catholic National, July 1895. This is the same conclusion that the Protestant Reformer John Calvin reached in his study of this prophecy. He wrote in 1536, some persons think us too severe and censorious when we call the Roman Pontiff Antichrist. His kingdom will consist in speaking great words or blasphemies against the Most High. Institutes Volume 2, page 410.
Number 7, this power would persecute God's people.
Daniel gave another identifying characteristic of this little horn power. I beheld the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. Daniel 7:21. He further says that this power would wear out the saints of the Most High. Has the Roman Church persecuted? The Western Watchman, December 24th, 1909. The Church has persecuted only a trio. Novice in church history will deny that. We have always defended the persecution of the Huguenots and the Spanish Inquisition. When she thinks it too good to use physical force, she will use it. Protestants will shudder as they recall Saint Bartholomew's Day, August the 23rd, 1572, the Inquisition, the Crusades against the Huguenots, Waldenses and Albigenses, the 30 Years' War.
Number 8, it would think to change times and laws.
We find that there is yet another very important distinguishing characteristic of this little horn power. The prophecy predicted that it would think to change times and laws. Daniel 7:25. Does the papal power claim to have the ability to change God's times and laws? The Pope has power to change times, to abrogate laws, and to dispense with all things, even the precepts of Christ. Did the papal power attempt to change God's divine law? Incredible as it may seem, she did that very thing. In its catechisms, the papacy has deleted the second commandment, which forbids the worship of images, and has divided the 10th commandment so that there would be still 10. Then they made the 4th commandment, which has to do with God's Sabbath day, the 3rd, and left out all reference to the 7th day as being the Sabbath day. And what about changing time? Here too, the Roman Church admits to have changed God's decreed times. The Church, after changing the day of rest from the Jewish Sabbath or 7th day of the week to the 1st, made the 3rd commandment refer to Sunday as the day to be kept holy as the Lord's Day. Catholic Encyclopedia, Volume 4, page 153. Once again, the prophetic finger of God points to the Roman Church, the papal system, as the little horn power of Daniel 7.
Number 9, it was to be in supremacy for 1,260 years.
This characteristic pinpoints the time when this Antichrist power would reign supreme, and the length of time it would persecute the saints of God. Daniel 7:25. And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. Here we find more Bible symbols. Briefly, the term time is an Aramaic word which stands for a Jewish year of 360 days. Times or 2 times signifies 2 years or 720 prophetic days, and a dividing of time would signify a half year or 180 days. When we add these, we arrive at a total of 1,260 prophetic days. According to the prophet Ezekiel, a prophetic day signifies 1 year. I have appointed thee each day for a year. Ezekiel 4:6. So we discover that the little horn power would be in supremacy for 1,260 years. When we read the parallel prophecies in Revelation 12:6 and 14, it becomes very clear that a time and times and half a time is equal to 1,260 days or years. The recognized year when the supremacy of the Pope began was AD 538, when the Emperor Justinian decreed that the Bishop of Rome would be head over all the churches, the definer of doctrine, and the corrector of heretics. And just as the Bible prophesied, exactly 1,260 years later, in 1798, the Roman Church's power was broken by Napoleon's general Berthier when Pope Pius was taken prisoner and died in exile. The murder of a Frenchman in Rome in 1798 gave the French an excuse for occupying the eternal city Rome and putting an end to the papal temporal power. The aged pontiff himself was carried off into exile in Valence. The enemies of the church church rejoiced. The last pope, they declared, had resigned.
Number 10, it arose out of the fourth beast.
The little horn power came up among the 10 horns, all of which arose out of the fourth beast, example the Roman Empire. Daniel 7:7-8. History clearly confirms this fact. Papal Rome arose out of pagan Rome. Professor George Ladd of Fuller Theological Seminary wrote, many of the great Christians of Reformation and post-Reformation times shared this view of prophetic truth and identified Antichrist with the Roman papacy. Among adherents of this interpretation were the Waldenses, the Hussites, Wycliffe, Luther, Calvin, Zwingli, Melanchthon, the Baptist theologian John Gill, and the martyrs Kramer, Tyndale, Latimer, Ridley. John Wycliffe called the historians the morning star of the Reformation. It was not an easy thing for the Reformers to take such a bold stand concerning this prophecy. Martin Luther expressed himself in these words, "Oh, how much pain it has caused me, though I had the scriptures on my side, that I should dare to make a stand alone against the Pope and hold him forth as Antichrist. 'Twas so I fought with myself and with Satan, till Christ by his own infallible word fortified by heart against these doubts." Martin, page 372 and 373. According to Bible prophecy, this power, which received a fatal wound in 1798, is to experience a revival in the last days of Earth's history. The prophet John refers to this as the healing of the wound, Revelation chapter 13. Even though Daniel saw the various things that the little horn power would do, blaspheming God, persecuting the saints, and changing God's law, he said that the time would come when this power would be judged and destroyed. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. What a glorious event as God's eternal kingdom is ushered in. The details of that kingdom are recorded earlier in the same chapter, as Daniel was given a vision of the second coming of Christ. "I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him, and there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed."
Can you imagine a world like that? Can you imagine a kingdom with no armies, no poverty, no violence, no sin, no suffering, just peace, love, and harmony, beauty and gladness, happiness, joy, forever and ever? But the choice is yours to make. For you see, there will be only two classes in that day: those who choose to follow Christ and his word, and those who choose to follow the great deceiver of the ages. So I would like to encourage you to respond to the invitation of our Creator, of our Lord Jesus Christ, before it is too late. Accept him today and be part of this marvelous, wonderful kingdom. I have read the end of the book, and guess what? We win. Thank you for subscribing. Please don't forget to like, push the notification bell for more videos, and I'll see you in the next video.